when you're developing those products, you realize that they're helping people, and you do, and you know that, and that's so fulfilling. And we've already talked about that. But when it's somebody that you love so dearly, it is a whole different ballgame.
Hello and welcome to the Being an Engineer podcast. Katie Karmelek is our guest today, a seasoned mechanical engineer and the co-founder of Chamfr, a game-changing online marketplace that connects medical device engineers with in-stock and custom components to accelerate prototyping and product development. With nearly 2 decades of experience spanning hands-on engineering and strategic business roles at companies like Olympus and Vention Medical, Katie brings deep expertise in driving medtech innovation from concept to commercialization. Beyond her professional achievements, Katie is passionate about mentoring the next generation of engineers. She actively supports programs like the Gallant Engineering Business Program at Northeastern University and contributes to various Women in STEM initiatives. Katie, thank you so much for being on the show with us today.
Thanks for having me, Aaron. I'm excited to talk with you today.
Terrific. Now, we had your co-founder on the show. It's been a few years now, maybe more than a few years, 3 years, something like that.
Yeah, you had Julie Schulte on. Mm-hmm.
Right. Yes. Yeah. And she was lovely, of course, but a lot has changed in the past 3 years or so. Chamfr has been growing quite a bit. You have different offerings now. And so we're going to dig into all of that. But before we get into all of that fun stuff, let's start with the typical first question that we do here on the Being an Engineer podcast, which is, what made you decide to become an engineer?
Sure. Yeah. So I was influenced by my grandfather first. He was a mechanical engineer. He served in World War II, and he was always doing stuff around the house. One day he would just say, okay, you know what? I think we need a new electrical outlet over there. And before you know it, an hour later, we'd be wiring a new electrical outlet, and he knew how to do everything, which just amazed me. I was captivated by him, his stories, and really just, how he approached everything from scratch with confidence and knew how to do everything. But it really wasn't also just him. I grew up with a single mom who went to medical school when I was in first grade, and she was then an ER doctor, is now retired. My dad is a dentist, and my brother followed in my mom's footsteps and is now also an ER doctor. So I was surrounded by medicine, but I knew for sure that I didn't want to be a doctor. So for me, I was actually really excited to find the medical device industry because I still wanted to help people, but without being bedside next to the patient, I could still bring kind of that, the engineering aspect and still be a part of the whole healthcare system, which just I've loved since the day I found the industry.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So your full-time effort right now is Chamfr,
Mm-hmm.
but before that, you had a career in engineering. I mean, doing engineering work. Can you maybe just walk us through a couple of highlights where places you worked and maybe if there was a project in particular that was exciting or interesting that you can talk about?
Absolutely. Yeah, I was fortunate to find the medical device industry I went to Northeastern. And so my first co-op, just finding my first job, essentially, I found the medical device industry. So I worked on a lot of really cool projects. I worked at a company called NMT Medical, which had a heart implant. So I was exposed to catheter delivery systems and minimally invasive, heart surgery that way. Just my very first co-op, I worked at Boston Scientific. I have a patent with them on a biliary stent. And then from there, I worked on the services side of the business. I loved just being able to work in a variety of different projects with different companies, mostly minimally invasive surgical devices, a lot of catheters. And one in particular is actually actively in clinical trials right now. And it's a really cool new way to treat hydrocephalus, which is a swelling in your brain, right? And so it can be a really horrible disease. And the current course of treatment is brain surgery, literally opening up your brain and putting a tube from your brain all the way down to your abdomen, like the most invasive.
Wow.
And a lot of people who get this have to have repeat surgeries. We met a woman who had, I think, over 14 repeat
Oh,
surgeries for this. And it's actually a minimally invasive femoral access device that can go all the way up and deliver a little implant this big to treat hydrocephalus. You guys should check them out. They're called Ceravasc. And I had a blast. Very complex product, but a lot of fun, and they're doing great things. So
incredible.
Yeah.
Wow. How fulfilling it must be to have been a part of that and see how it impacts people's lives.
You know what? I'm such a small part of it, and that's the best part too. I've been exposed to so many great people. It takes a ton of manpower, women power, all the power to bring those products to market, and having access to the parts that you need, to the testing that you need, right? And really building out that whole comprehensive strategy to get that product to market takes a lot. And I just feel fortunate to have been a very small part of that one in particular, and several others.
All right. So that's a perfect segue into Chamfr, having access to the components you need to develop a product. Tell us a little bit about Chamfr. What is Chamfr? How did it get started? And what was the problem that Chamfr is solving?
Yeah, so Chamfr is an online marketplace. We are connecting buyers and suppliers at their point of need, and that is through access to in-stock components is one piece of it. We also facilitate connections at the custom component level, right? Getting connected with the right supplier that you need to source that specialized component that might not be in stock or readily available. And then beyond that, it's not just about components. When you're developing a medical device, you need a lot of different services and capabilities. So we're really, truly are the one-stop shop experience that can help you get connected to the right person to bring that product to market faster. We initially started with the foundation of the marketplace, right? That in-stock components, because number one, I was an R&D engineer. I say was because I don't really practice bringing devices to market. I guess I still am an R&D engineer. But I was trying to prototype and not finding the parts that I needed. I'd have to go to multiple websites. Nothing fit thoughtfully together. And it was a lot of time spent. And so, my vision for bringing Chamfr to light, which I have a co-founder that had a different vision, and it's really interesting how we came together. But I was like, I don't want to waste all this time. I just want to be able to place one shopping experience. I want to be able to get what I need, and I want them to be from medical grade suppliers, not kind of what I would say, quote, dirty tubing from maybe a more industrial supplier. I want to know that I'm going to be working with the people that can help me long term, but I also don't want to wait weeks. I don't want to have to write a PO and go through all of that process. I want to be able to get parts in my hands quickly, because that's the name of the game, right? It takes a lot of time to figure out and iterate and play in order to get the product to the right design that you need. And then Julie, who you mentioned earlier, so we actually had the same concept for the business around the same time, and she had a completely different perspective on it. She understood the prototyping angle, but she was coming from the sales side saying, I need to access these engineers at their point of need. I need to be able to get spec'd in early. I need to be I want them to know about me and my, and so for her, it was the sales teams need this as well. And so we kind of came together and said, yeah, both of our problems are solved with the same solution. We need to do this. So that was sort of the background around Chamfr. A lot of people ask us why the name Chamfr. So it is because we are giving engineers an edge to innovate faster, right? With the access of components as well as the access to this supply base that we've built. We have hundreds of suppliers, over 100 suppliers, and then it's like almost 12,000 in-stock components that we have on our site today. So we've grown tremendously, and I think we've really just scratched the surface of not just the number of products, but the technologies and the suppliers that we can bring to this marketplace.
Yeah, I feel like I see Chamfr just all over the place now. You guys really have just blown up. Congratulations on the success of the company to date. And I'm sure it's only going to get bigger and better from here. How did you and Julie meet initially?
Yeah, so Julie was running sales and marketing at a company called Vention Medical. I had been part of Vention, but as by acquisition of a small design company that I called TDC Medical. That was actually one of my most favorite jobs ever. I'm actually still very close friends with the engineers that I worked with there. We just had a blast bringing products to market and testing and designing. But so, by acquisition, TDC became what was known as Vention Medical, and Julie was brought on the executive team. So one day she's passing me in the hallway and she's like, "Wait, you're an engineer, come here." And she asked me to explain to her the difference of a multi-lumen versus a coaxial design of a catheter. So I just drew a couple of circles and I'm like, this is how you do it. And she goes, "You need to be in marketing." And I was like, "No, I don't. Can I go back to my job now? Because I have a lot of work to do." And it probably took another year. She ultimately convinced me to come over to marketing, and we ended up having a blast. As you may know, Vention Medical had an online store. And at the time, we were acquiring new component technologies. And I was ultimately responsible under Julie to bring those products not only to the online store, but to the sales teams and educate them on how what new markets we were uncovering, how those components could be leveraged. And the sales teams loved it. They were like, "Bring me more of these leads. You're making my job so much easier." And we just saw exponential sales across all those component technologies. So we ended up having a blast doing all of that. Now Vention was acquired and is now Northeastern Medical. And so at that time, I think it had been over 10 years that I had been at TDC and then Vention. And I was like, I think it's time to, see something else. And then it was right around the time where Julie and I had sort of concepted the idea for Chamfr, and we couldn't get it out of our heads. We both were toying with other jobs and what we do. And we really just were like, the timing probably isn't right because we both had young kids and we were really overwhelmed by that. But we said, you know what, there's never going to be a right time. We gotta try. So,
yeah, That's terrific. Talk a little bit about the need for in-stock components. I mean, I don't know that everyone fully realizes or appreciates the challenges that an engineer might go through to get something for a prototype quickly. Wasn't it the case prior to Chamfr that you could just go out and buy 3 balloons off the shelf?
If you wanted 3 balloons, you'd probably be spending $15,000, $20,000. You'd get a minimum of some number of balloons, but you'd have to pay for the tooling of the balloon, pay for the extrusion run, and wait for the extrusion to be run to then sent there to then blow mold in that tooling that you just paid for. And you never that you'd have to be so confident in your design because you're spending not only that money, but time is money too. So you're talking 6-8 weeks at minimum, if not longer. So no, we've been very fortunate that the partners that we've built as we grew Chamfr saw the value and invested in these products on the shelf, right? This did not happen overnight. I mean, I can tell you Poba Medical started with us having no balloons on the shelf. Maybe they started with, 20 to 50 to start. And now they have over 200 balloons in stock today, if not even more. I mean, they've just exploded. So they have a ton of products. And that's an investment in their side, right? In the tooling and everything, but they saw the value and it really helps expedite because that balloon, you might think you need a spherical, but you're not exactly sure what diameter, or you don't know what durometer urethane you might want to have that out of, right? And so now you can just grab a bag of a few balloons for a couple $100, test them out, and then the next day you could be finalizing your design.
Amazing. So much time is saved. By the way, Poba Medical founder Dan Kasperzik, I think, was the 3rd guest on the Being an Engineer podcast
really?
5 years ago.
He's such a great guy. Yeah, that was a good early guest.
Storyteller too.
Yeah, absolutely.
From motors and robotics to controls, automation, and precision prototyping, Simutech brings ANSYS simulation tools and expert insight directly to your team. We help you accelerate design, reduce risk, and eliminate costly rework.
Validate before you fabricate. Simutech Group helps you simulate thermal stress, vibration, fluid flow, electronics cooling, electromagnetic performance, you name it.
Whether you're in automotive, aerospace, energy, industrial automation, or the next big thing, Simutech partners with innovators to deliver simulation-driven results that move products forward. Build smarter machines, launch stronger products, scale faster with Simutech's simulation support by your side.
Simutech Group, your engineering partner in motion. Visit simutechgroup.com and let's power up your next design.
All right. Well, back to Chamfr. What were some of the challenges that your team faced early on, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah. I don't think we realized how complex a marketplace is when we decided to start this whole thing. Really, I think if we could go back and tell ourselves then how hard it was going to be, I don't know if we would have taken the same path. But I think in that we are the kind of people that are just, when you set your mind to something, we're going to figure it out no matter how hard it is. And we'll die trying, but we will figure it out. And so in the early days when we had concepted this and we were thinking about it, we also, decided, okay, let's talk to some suppliers. Let's validate this, that we have that before we invest in a tool that they may or may not use. Let's get some of that feedback. And I'll never forget one of our first meetings with one of the first suppliers that joined Chamfr. We sat down, we told them, and they were like, okay, we're in. And they started to write a check to us. And we're like, that we haven't even built the marketplace yet, right? Like we're just trying to figure out if we're going to do this. And they're like, if anybody can do it, it's you guys. So I'm investing in that. And it's proven true. They weren't wrong. Some of our earliest adopters are some of our best suppliers who have been with us from the very beginning.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. I'm sure this happens all the time, but I'm curious if you have any specific stories you can share where a team's development really was accelerated, pretty dramatically by access to these in-stock components at Chamfr.
Yeah, I actually just heard a story recently. For us, when we sell these parts online, it's all digitized, right? So we're not physically talking to people. So we don't always get all of the stories, but we love them. So or whoever's listening, if you have a great story, how you've used Chamfr, please let us know because we love to hear them. But I was fortunate enough to be having a conversation recently. It was a physician entrepreneur developing a product, and they went from concept to first in human in 6 months. And they said it was all because of Chamfr.
That's incredible.
It's incredible.
Years usually.
Yeah. So that we're talking like 5, 6, maybe 3, 5 years, depending on the complexity of the product, the 510K aspect, your regulatory path, and what you need to do at the amount of testing that's required, of course. Many devices that are highly complex do take a lot longer. But in this one example, I was floored because I've never, typically it takes 5 months just to kind of get that first prototype off and right, let alone being that far through the development process. And that was all attributed to the fast access of components, having them readily available, and, working with a partner that could really just innovate that quickly with them.
That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I love efficiency and seeing solutions in the market that actually make a real difference. And so hearing something like that, who knows how long it would have taken this company otherwise, years probably, and probably hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not more, saved.
Absolutely.
That's a big impact.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, we love to hear those stories. It just also really validates why we did this, right? Our ultimate goal is helping products get to market faster because that's helping somebody. And it doesn't have to always be a life-saving device. It can be just making someone's life even incrementally better is really why we do this. And so, the fact that it was that much faster was just mind-blowing for us.
Yeah. Yeah. How does it feel to know that you're having an impact on patients' lives out there in a way that, they may not have been able to experience without Chamfr?
Yeah. Sometimes we have to pinch ourselves. We're like, is this really happening? Did we do this? Is this really ours?
Wow. Amazing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, short break here. The Being an Engineer podcast is brought to you by Pipeline Design and Engineering, where we don't design pipelines, but we do help companies develop advanced manufacturing processes, automated machines, and custom fixtures, complemented with product design and R&D services. And we're having an exciting event this October called PDX. It's October 21st and 22nd out here in Phoenix, where we'll have dozens of subject matter experts doing training on different topics relevant to engineers who develop physical products. For example, how to program a robot, or glue dispensing, or vision inspection, or advanced surface modeling for CAD, practical project management, 3D scanning and reverse engineering, metrology, GD&T, the list goes on and on and on. It's going to be a fun time and wonderful educational experience. So we hope you can join us this October 21st and 22nd, just outside of Phoenix. All right, getting back to Katie. So Katie, you had mentioned that your grandfather was an engineer and he influenced you. Thinking back on that, what are some of the other ways that he influenced you to decide to become an engineer and pursue that career path?
Mm-hmm. I think so. He always had a way of making things with such precision. He's very Polish, very he does everything. Even his signature was always exactly the same, right? Everything. And so, watching him just be so organized and diligent and everything, that was one piece that, you kind of just sort of take for granted. You think engineering, you're just tinkering and making a mess or whatnot. But his workshop, he had this shed with, hundreds of thousands of various parts dating back to who knows how long, all different nuts and bolts and screws, and everything was labeled. He had his little embossed label maker. And so I have to give him a lot of credit in that way, because he taught me to value craftsmanship, I'll say, and also have some curiosity, because I was always amazed that he knew everything and I didn't know how he knew everything. And so I always wanted to know more. So that's, I'd say, where how I got that from him. And then, he was a very independent person. And I don't know if I got that from him or not, but that's one similarity between the two of us that we'll always share.
Curiosity, I think, is a very important word for engineers. What other advice or attributes to develop would you suggest for young engineers who want to get into the medical device field, or even those particularly interested in eventually exploring entrepreneurship?
Mm-hmm. The first thing I'd say is just say yes to opportunities as they arise, because for instance, the example of Julie pulling me into marketing or whatnot. And I was fortunate enough to have somebody that was doing the pulling in that example, right? And really saw the value in me to be in that role. You don't always get that every day. Say yes, be curious, but say yes, because those opportunities are examples of how you can get experience that, you might not realize how valuable that can be. And sometimes you can say yes and it's not a great fit, and then that you don't want to do that. So I would say always be open to new opportunities and experiences as they come. And then the other thing I would say is don't wait to be ready. I think, for us with Chamfr, if we had waited to be ready, we never would have built this. We had to start small. We are still very scrappy, even though we're 8 years in. We still do a lot of things ourselves. We're very hands-on. We're very into we're going to figure this out and truly understand it, and then automate. And I feel like that allows us to really have control over how we've built our business, the ins and outs of it. So, and surround yourself with people that have that same mindset. Go for it, start scrappy, figure stuff out, and just, keep at it. There's always a solution, even when it feels like there isn't.
Yeah. I love the attitude of scrappy. When I started Pipeline, it was just me, and I worked out of a spare bedroom in my house. And it was that way, even as we started hiring people and growing a little bit for the first almost 10 years. It was that format. Everyone worked from home. We didn't have a formal office. Overhead was really low. We were definitely scrappy. And I think that's what enabled us to grow enough to the point where okay, now we can afford an office, right? We were able to survive for long enough to get to that tipping point because we were so scrappy. So I love that attitude personally. I'd love to talk a little bit more about your transition into marketing, because as far as I know, that was not something that you had done before, right? This is brand new for you.
Yeah.
Okay. So Julie says, hey, Katie, you should be a marketer. And you're like, that's crazy. And eventually a year later, you do it. So, what was that transition like? And what was it like becoming a marketer, coming from engineering? What does a marketer even do?
Yeah, it's a great question. I had no idea at the time. I was like, engineers don't belong in marketing. That doesn't make sense. And she's like, no, you don't understand. They're the best fit. So it's actually a role which was new to me at the time. I had never heard of it. And you're called product managers. So essentially, you truly understand the ins and outs of the product in which you're marketing and be able to speak to the technical aspect. You do need to have good communication skills so that you can translate the technical aspect of whatever product you're talking about to sales, to marketing, making sure that you can dumb down. If that's not a great way, that's not a good choice words, but you know what I mean? You can simplify the highly technical piece of it and make it digestible for whether that's going to be some kind of content, whether that's for sales trainings and purposes. And it really just makes everybody on the same page. And that takes a certain kind of person, which I ended up loving. I never thought I would say that. Honestly, when she came to me and this was all happening, I'm like, I see myself in R&D. I'm going to be an R&D manager of some company. That was the role in my mind eventually. And that was where I was going to head to. But it was so much fun, and it really helps me develop a lot of other skills. So not just communication skills, but business strategy skills, bringing me to the table with the executive team so that we could connect these dots and report out on the success of the online store and other things. So it really brought to light a lot of other opportunities that I never would have experienced if I kind of just pigeonholed myself and said, no, I'm an R&D engineer. This is what I do. It opened up. And once you have those skills, you can be an engineer anywhere. You see a lot of engineer CEOs, you see them in all different roles. And so I think it can really help because it just is that it's a mindset more than a skill set at a certain point. And I think that's really what matters. So getting all of the various experiences of people's different mindsets and what that means to a business, an organization, or even in academia, wherever you are, it all translates, and it's important to have experience with it.
The Product Development Expo, or PDX, is your chance to learn from subject matter experts providing practical, hands-on training for dozens of different engineering topics. GD&T, Advanced Surface Modeling, DFM, Plating and Finishing Techniques, Programming Robots, Adhesive Dispensing, Prototyping Tips and Tricks, and lots more. PDX happens October 21st and 22nd in Phoenix, Arizona. Learn more at pdexpo.engineer. That's pdexpo.engineer. It sounds like that role was really helpful in preparing you to start Chamfr.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, well, it was also, Julie and I, the way that we work together, and we had a third co-founder, Catherine, and all of us are working on this marketing team together. It was the way that we worked together was just absolutely incredible. I mean, we didn't live near each other. We were working mostly from home. I was working out of one of the Vention Medical offices, but most of us were completely remote. And so we not only worked in complete silos, if you would, geography wise, but we are so synergized as a team. And that's how you know that, once you find good people, this, you kind of tend to stay together. And that was instrumental in starting Chamfr, because when you start a business with somebody, you are essentially getting married to them, and it can be really hard sometimes. But being able to overcome those challenges, face them together, And you do want somebody with a different mind. You don't want to have two of the same perspectives in a business, because you really need to challenge each other and be able to have different roles, since you won't have a lot of people. And that's really proven to be, probably one of the best decisions I ever made in my life, was to take Julie up on that opportunity, because I don't think we'd be here today if I hadn't.
It's so funny to think about how, maybe not little, but key decisions along the timeline of life can make such a drastic difference in the eventual trajectory of our lives, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I tell this story. So I go to Northeastern and I'll talk to the students. They always ask me about my career path and the choices that I made. And when I was in college, my last co-op, I had 3 co-ops at Northeastern, and my last one, I was going to just ditch engineering altogether and go travel. I was going to go to Hawaii and study whales for a little bit and pretend I'm a marine biologist. And then I was going to go to New Zealand and work on a farm and just enjoy life. And I was able to do this and still meet the curriculum requirements. I would just have to write a paper about my experiences. But my co-op advisor said, just go on a few interviews. And, that's it. Just keep up your skill sets, update your resume. So I went on an interview at Boston Scientific, and I got offered this amazing opportunity to work in their endoscopy team that I couldn't refuse. So I ended up not going at all on my whole expedition and travel. And I went to Boston Scientific, and I do, as I said before, I have a patent with them on the biliary stent that I worked on. And I met a lot of great people and had a wonderful experience. And then the student, whenever I tell this story, they always are like, so have you gone to New Zealand or Hawaii? And I was like, I still haven't, actually. I've still never been to either place.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
That's it. I grew up in Hawaii. I don't know if you knew this.
Did you? I didn't know that.
I was born and raised in Hawaii. That's right. On Oahu, a town on the east side of the island called Kaneohe. So, it was amazing, right? I loved growing up there. That's still home. I hope to eventually end up there someday. And another place that I've always wanted to visit was New Zealand, because it also just looks gorgeous. And, we're actually planning a trip to New Zealand next year. So it's funny to hear you say those two places.
Yes. It's so funny. Yeah. One day we'll get there. We have 3 kids now, so it's, life is a little different, but we'll be getting them all there sometime, I think.
Yeah. Well, speaking of 3 kids, you had a personal experience just very recently, and it underscored the importance of, kind of viscerally underscored the importance of getting components into engineers' hands quickly so that they can develop these life-saving, life-sustaining medical devices. Can you share a little bit about that experience?
Absolutely. This one does hit pretty close to home. So just recently, my 9-year-old son was hospitalized. He ended up having a badly perforated appendix, and we ended up being admitted to the hospital for 18 days together. We got home just the other day, just a few days ago. And he has a PICC line for at-home IV antibiotics, which I'm administering to him 3 times a day. I'm a home nurse, and as well now I'm going to add that one to my resume. But it was quite a wild ride. He was very, very sick, and it's hard when your kid is sick no matter what. And this was very intense, and I'm sitting in the hospital thinking about all of the times I spent building catheters and developing products that were similar to everything I'm seeing around me. And it was like, I couldn't, in the moment, and when you're developing those products, you realize that they're helping people, and you do, and that, and that's so fulfilling. And we've already talked about that. But when it's somebody that you love so dearly, it is a whole different ballgame. I was sitting in the one of the rooms when my son ended up having the PICC line placed, and he was brave enough. They gave him the option. He was brave enough to do it under local anesthesia. So he was awake, and we were talking, and it was very scary for him. He had a moment where the catheter was kind of not having a life of its own and not going the right way. And he felt like he couldn't breathe for a minute. And we both sat there and worked through it together. He was so brave. And I'm like seeing this catheter that I saw thousands of times, right? On all different French sizes and all the lure fittings and everything. And then you watch it and realize that, it's incredible what everybody does in our industry. And it just, you really have this moment where you're like, okay, I am even more now so connected to this industry, to what we do, and to our mission to help people. We're not just enabling innovation; we're really making people's lives better or potentially saving their lives. And my son is now one of the people who needed that. He's still at home right now with his PICC line in his arm. It's a cool purple PICC line, so it's awesome. And I got him some arm sleeves so that he looks really cool when he's outside and keeping it protected.
Nice.
But yeah, it's been quite an experience that, I'll never forget. And hopefully he won't remember all of the details in as much, as clear. But no, it's been one of those times where I'm very grateful for everybody involved in the healthcare system, from everyone in medtech to all of the nurses and doctors and everybody involved. So it's been, a lot of gratitude right now for everything that's done.
Yeah, amazing. Wow. Well, I'm so happy to hear that he's doing well now. And what an incredible story. Thank you for sharing such a personal experience. It makes me remember when our second child was born and we were in the hospital, and a nurse came in with, it's called a Vocera badge. It's basically a medical walkie-talkie that nurses and physicians wear at hospitals, and they can push a button and easily call someone or communicate with someone. Anyway, this nurse walked in wearing this Vocera badge, and I said to myself, oh, I can't believe it. I worked on this. It was a small part. I think I did DFM on part of the housing for this plastic
so cool.
injection molded badge, but I saw it in real life, and someone's actually using this, and it was such a neat feeling. So, your experience was, I think, so much more powerful, but, it's so fulfilling seeing something that you had a hand in, or, even the industry in which you're a part, seeing that in real life.
Yeah. Every day I'm giving him the antibiotics. I'm connecting the syringe, all the lure fittings together. And I'm like, oh, we have these syringes, these same BD syringes on Chamfr. We have the same tubing.
Yeah.
We sell all of this. And it's been very eye-opening, I'll say. I have while I understood it, it didn't resonate the exact same way that it does today. So I'm feeling even more empowered by what we do, and how we'll continue to help drive all of these amazing innovations to market to help those people that really need them.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure if Julie were here right now, she'd say to you, Katie, that's the story that we need to start telling over and over and over. This is the bringing out the marketer in you here.
Yeah.
So you mentioned all the BD syringe, and Chamfr has so many different components on its marketplace right now. How do you determine which components are most needed? What's the process internally within Chamfr to decide that?
Yeah. So in the beginning, we went off of what we knew that the industry needed. And we really focused a lot at interventional because that's where we had come from. That was our background and what the part of the industry that we really needed. And we knew that industry needed us, right? It was very clear. Tubing, balloons, heat shrink, all of that and even today, I think we can still service in the interventional market better, but we have a lot to offer and we love that. We've got a very solid foundation. And then what we've been doing in parallel is educating ourselves on what other medtech industries need, right? Looking at how can we support bioelectronics? How can we support wearables, diagnostics? How can we make sure that the way engineers innovate, they can get what they need on Chamfr? And it comes with, not just educating ourselves, but also asking our audience, our buyers. So when you come to Chamfr, there's actually a little survey on the product table page. Did you find what you're looking for? We get a lot of input through that. People are constantly telling us because, by them telling us, we help make their lives easier. We help make their jobs easier. So they fill that out, and we'll use all of that data to inform maybe going after a new supplier, maybe going, wherever we need to go to try to connect those dots, we will. And then also search data. So we have an AI-enabled search interface, and we collect that data regularly. And we're looking, what are people searching for and not finding? that's where we need to focus, right? There's a real need. And so we kind of take a multi-pronged approach, but that's really how we're looking to expand. So anybody, if you have feedback, you don't have to fill out that survey. You can contact us anytime, but that's a lot of how we are currently expanding.
We'll list Katie's home address in the show notes so you can send her a
sure, come on by. I can show you how to dose some antibiotics.
Right. Well, looking forward to the future of Chamfr, what do you hope is true about Chamfr, I don't know, 3-5 years from now? So
we are investing in really digitizing the whole product, that whole product development life cycle, especially sort of that phase 1 through 3, if you will, the early stage development, being able to make everything that happens in that part of the process easier, faster. And we do that with the in-stock components, with access to the supply base, but then also with additional innovative tools. So there's a lot more coming from Chamfr that's really exciting. I can't tell everybody exactly what it is quite yet, but we are really at a pivotal moment in our organization where we're fortunate enough to be making some exciting changes in features and functionalities. So you'll see more from us, especially in the next 6 months to a year, that really to just be that hub, that central hub where engineers and supply chain folks can come to and trust that they're going to get what they need to help make their jobs easier.
Going back to the beginning of Chamfr, I know you had a few customers early on that really believed in you and invested in you. Mm-hmm. But you've grown far beyond that. How did you get your first, I don't know, several dozen customers? What did that look like from a sales standpoint?
Yeah. So being an R&D engineer, I first just went to all my buddies and I was like, guys, but we had told them we were developing Chamfr. They were our beta testers, right? We had a whole slew of beta testing people. And it was a lot of, hey, come check this out. What do you think? What should we do different? What parts do we need? So we had an audience early on that were early adopter buyers. So we talked about the early adopter suppliers as well, but we had them on the buy side as well. And so they were, and still are some of our best customers. They've been with us from the very beginning and they continue to come back and use Chamfr. Even though they know all of our suppliers and they have those relationships, they're still using Chamfr for its ease of use and it really simplifies their development process. So they'll still buy here, even if they could potentially go direct. So that was one way. And then Julie and I, in the very beginning, were boots on the ground. We went into Boston Scientific, we went into Abbott, went to many of the large OEMs, and we just went and did lunch and learns. We'd be like, hey, you guys want some free food? What engineer says no to free food? And so we would just bring in lunch and we'd tell them what we were doing. We'd bring some parts, we'd get their feedback. And that was very, very effective. As we've grown, we are, not necessarily doing those same tactics, right? So we're leveraging other digital tools. But we are also still picking up the phone and talking to our buyers. We're asking them, what can we do different? How can we help you? What do you need? So while we are still very intimate with our buyers, we're also working a bit smarter using some other more digital tools to really kind of continue to spread the word about Chamfr and who we are.
Terrific. All right. Mm-hmm. Well, one more question here and then we'll wrap things up. So we've already talked about how, giving engineers quick access to components early on will accelerate the speed of engineering. What's something else that you've seen, not necessarily at Chamfr, it could be at Chamfr, but thinking back over your career as an engineering, what is something that you have seen done to accelerate the speed of engineering?
Yeah, so one of the critical pieces to this is decision making, right? So whoever comes to Chamfr has to make a decision about what they're going to buy, right? So I think having somebody that has that kind of that decisiveness about them. What's nice about Chamfr is you can pick a lot of stuff. But that is one area that I think, really being able to say, okay, here's the plan, here's the strategy, here's where we're going to tackle whatever this problem is. That is one thing that can really expedite, because the more you waffle and waver, we're just going to waste time as we go through that process. But then, in terms of kind of tools and functionality, the one thing that's really exploded from like my early days in developing medical devices and not just kind of access of in-stock components, but really the additive manufacturing piece, I think has been a game changer and really complements Chamfr beautifully, because you can get those parts, but you're still going to need some customization. You're going to need something quick, whether that's a custom distal tip or a proximal end, or, even if it's, a fixture to hold it, to test it properly. You can do so much with that tech that really then can continue to supplement getting you to market faster while getting exactly what you need to get there.
Yeah, I loved your thought about decision making. I remember when I had my first internship back in college, and my boss, I got to be friends with him, and he shared how he was hired at this company. And he said when he was interviewed by the president of the company, I can't remember the exact question, but the answer he gave was, I know how to make a decision. It might not be the right decision, but I will make a decision. And I remember thinking at the time, that's a terrible answer. It might not be the right decision. Why would you say that? And over the years, realizing, oh, okay, I get it now. Yeah. It might not be the perfect decision, but making a decision allows you to get into action, to actually do something. And clarity comes from action and actually doing things. And you'll learn quickly if it wasn't the right decision, and then you can course correct and do the other thing.
Exactly. Fail fast, right? It makes then again, that just helps you move faster. Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Katie, this has been delightful. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. Congratulations again on all the success that Chamfr has had and will continue to have, I'm sure. How can people get in touch with you?
Sure. So LinkedIn is the best way. I mean, first and foremost, you got to follow Chamfr, because we are putting out a ton of great content. We're always letting people know when new products come, when we have a new supplier launch. We had our first webinar recently that was super successful, and we're going to have a couple of more really exciting ones coming soon. So follow us on LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn as well. Send me a message. We'll connect that way. Those are the best ways. But if you do send an email to just contact us on Chamfr, I see all of those. I'll probably respond right to you. So you can find us in a bunch of different ways, but LinkedIn is our most favorite way of interacting with our friends and colleagues out in the industry.
Fantastic. Yeah. Katie, thank you so much again.
And thank you, Aaron. This has been a pleasure. It's like having a great conversation with a friend that I had never met before, but I feel like we've known each other forever now.
I feel the same way.
Excellent. Well, thanks again. Really appreciate this.
Thank you, Katie. I'm Aaron Moncur, founder of Pipeline Design and Engineering. If you liked what you heard today, please share the episode. To learn how your team can leverage our team's expertise developing advanced manufacturing processes, automated machines, and custom fixtures, complemented with product design and R&D services, visit us at teampipeline.us. To join a vibrant community of engineers online, visit thewave.engineer. Thank you for listening.